There's nothing to writing. All you do is sit down at a typewriter and bleed. Welcome to The Bleeders, a podcast and support group about book writing and publishing. I'm writer and podcaster Courtney Kosak, and each week I'll bring you new conversations with authors, agents, and publishers about how to write and sell books. So Bleeders, summer school is now in session, and I'm doing something a little different. I'm trying to write a freaking book, and I've discovered that's very hard to do while producing 3 podcasts. So I had already batched a bunch of interviews for you guys. I was very excited to release them, and that's what I'm going to do. I did it all in advance. It's all ready for you, and I can take 2 months off to write this book. So, long story short, this is how it's going to go down. I am going to serve you up a mini-sode every Monday. Okay, let's call it a flash podcast in literary terms. And it's going to offer a delicious sample or a key lesson from the full conversation. It's going to be shorter. And then the full interview is over on the newly launched YouTube channel for The Bleeders, which is really cute. It's really fun to watch everybody. So I think you'll enjoy that. And yes, I am going on 40 and I am launching a YouTube channel. There's no shame in my game. The handle on YouTube is @Bleeders Podcast. So you can find the show on youtube.com/@Bleeders Podcast. You have to use the @ sign. It's stupid, but it's how it works. So again, youtube.com/@Bleeders Podcast. And make sure you subscribe over there so you can stay up on the latest. And without further ado, our instructor for today is...
Hi, my name is Rachel Kramer Bussel. I am an erotica anthology editor, author of How to Write Erotica, and editor of Open Secrets magazine. And I also write essays and articles.
Okay, so you've edited more than 60, is that right?
More than 70 anthologies, yeah. It's a lot.
More than 70 anthologies of erotic fiction. So let's talk about, you wrote a whole book about how to write erotica, but let's do like a little mini tutorial. Obviously, people need to get the book for the deep dive, but what would be some tips for how to get started?
First, I think, find something you want to write about. There's prompts in my book, and some of them are really basic. Like literally, I can see your living room, so I see these chairs. One of my prompts is write erotica set in a chair or about a chair, and that could be a bar stool, it could be a office chair, it could be any kind of chair. And I like that prompt because usually people are writing about sex in a bed or some other setting. They're not usually writing about a chair, and probably for 2 people to have, let's say, intercourse in a chair might be awkward, but there's tons of other things you can do in a chair. Someone could be tied to a chair. I've written several restaurant stories where someone is sitting in a chair and something is happening either above the table or below the table. There's just like so many things you can do. And I think you could apply that prompt to almost any piece of furniture or any room in your house. Like you could say, okay, I'm going to write erotica set at a desk or in the bathroom or on the roof or in the basement or the attic, and, just play with that. Or if you already have an idea in your head, like you saw something on the news about, I don't know, a celebrity, or you saw just something, or you overheard something. I mean, I've written stories just based on a Subway ad for, there was this TV show, Necessary Roughness, and it was, I think,
oh my God, I was a writer's assistant on that show.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay, so I never saw it, and I actually don't really know what it's about, but it's a football term, right?
Yeah.
So I wrote a short story called Necessary Roughness. I'm going to send you that book.
That's so funny.
Because I just thought, what a perfect erotica story title. I don't have to know what this is about in real life to write an erotica story based on this. So I love eavesdropping on people's conversations and picking up like a phrase or just a snippet. And I'm not saying go eavesdrop and like write down that person's life or go on FetLife and like copy someone's life story. Don't do that. But you can definitely get inspiration from like literally anywhere. I mean, you could go on Twitter, you could go on FetLife or on any dating site, and like I mean, I'm not on dating apps because I'm in a long-term relationship. But if I was and I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to swipe. This is embarrassing. I don't even know which is left or right, like which is the right, the good one and bad one. But if I'm not going to like say yes to that person, maybe like they could prompt an erotica story. You don't have to tell them. I mean, you don't really know that much about them anyway, but maybe just something about their photo or their profile. You're like, I'm going to try to eroticize this.
Swipe right on you. Yeah. Or take headlines like Donald Trump's indictment. I mean,
maybe someone's having like an indictment party and they're like, every time he says indicated, you beat someone or something. I don't know.
Like Stormy's Revenge erotica.
I could see that. Well, if you go on Amazon, there are a lot of, I'm sure there's Trump, but there's other, I can't think off the top of my head, but like every election cycle, there are ones.
Oh, I bet.
And that actually is reminding me, speaking of publicity, this site is no longer online, but for a very brief moment in time, I had a website called Sarah Palin Erotica, and it was like fan fiction about her. But she was someone who people were just intrigued by. And I was intrigued by just how ridiculous she was. And I thought it would be an opportunity to sort of make fun of that within an erotica context. I think I took it down because I was worried about the Secret Service coming after me or something. But I'm pretty sure that if you wrote fan fiction about someone very famous and it was good enough, you could get attention for that. There's a famous story called Courtney Cox's Asshole. That actually, it's written by the writer now known as Joey Soloway, but it's online somewhere.
Oh, really? Tell me about it.
It's been so long since I read it, but like it's about, I think, a woman whose job is bleaching Courtney Cox's asshole. I think like look it up because it's online, but that story helped put them on the map, I think, like in some writing circles. So I'm not saying everyone should be writing erotic fan fiction, but I think it also, you really have to ask yourself, like, is it coming from a genuine interest in the person? Because I always think that will come across, whether you're writing celebrity erotica or whatever it is. When you're starting out especially, don't pick a fetish to write about that you hate or you know absolutely nothing about unless you have access to like research about it. Like I've written about fire eating, and that actually scares me. Like I've seen it in person and I'm fascinated by it, but I actually find it terrifying and I would never eat fire myself. But that pushed me to try to write about it because I wanted to like know what that was like. And I had to do a lot of research to find out, how do you put out a fire in your mouth without burning yourself and then make that sexy? So don't try something super complicated like that your first time writing erotica. Like generally, I would say use a fantasy of yours or an interest of yours. Even if the real life interest isn't sexual, you can eroticize it for your fictional purposes. Or you can also take like a terrible experience. You know, maybe you've been waiting online at the DMV for 3 hours and you want to punch someone and you're just like, is it even worth it? Like, do I need my license? But maybe you can eroticize like people hooking up at the DMV.
Nice. Yeah. That will make it go faster. Yeah.
Start with something in front of you or something in your life that you're already thinking about, and then see what happens as you start writing. Like you don't have to know everything that's going to happen right away. You can figure that out.
Yeah, I would think you would want to start from a place of what turned you on, because that's the whole genre, is turning people on. So like,
yes,
it seems like write what you know.
I would say write what you know at the beginning, and then you can definitely branch out. I think it's going to be just much harder to write about something you hate or that turns you off. I think that's different than writing about something that maybe you're neutral on. So, you know, I don't think you have to choose the thing that's the most challenging to start. Like choose something relatively in your wheelhouse and then see what happens.
Do you mostly like how erotica works in your personal sexuality? Are you like discovering new things through your writing that you like would want to try, or are you like exploring the fantasy through the writing and then you're like, I don't even need to try this? Or do you know what I'm kind of getting at?
I know what you're saying. I would say in the past I've definitely written about things that I was curious about or that I'd heard about and wanted to explore. And sometimes those are things that weren't conscious. Like I wrote a story about a professional submissive and there was daddy play. And I was like, that's weird because that's not actually my personal fetish. But writing the story really turned me on. And I think those can be two different things. Like you can be very into the fantasy of your fictional story and be like, this written down is hot, but I don't actually want to try that. Or it could be the opposite, where writing it down makes you realize that you want to try it. I would say now my erotica is more, I wouldn't say it's more cerebral, but it's more maybe theoretical. Like it's not directly related to my personal sex life. But I think that's partly because I've been doing it for so long. I've written so much inspired by my own life, either loosely veiled. Like I wrote about my first lap dance, a story called Lap Dance Lust. That is another story that I'm going to say is 100% true. I mean, it's set at Cheetahs in LA and it's like me getting a lap dance. And the woman told me, this is so long ago now. I don't remember what year, but it's probably 20 years ago. She told me about a celebrity who had come in. I did not name that person in the story, but I just dictated what happened. But actually, that's not true. I didn't dictate what happened. I think that's another misnomer about both erotic, especially erotica, but also other fiction. People think you just write down what happened and you're done. It's actually really hard to write a fiction about your own life because you're always choosing bits and pieces to include, and you're massaging the details, and you're using like the craft of writing to tell a story. And I'm going to actually say that applies to essays too. People also think, well, it happened to you, so you just sit down and write it and you're done. And it's super challenging to write an essay. Partly, I think, because it happened to you, so you know everything that happened before, everything that happened after. There's so many details you could put in, and you're like, which ones are relevant and what is the actual heart of what I'm trying to say? So it's not always as simple as write what you know. But if you have had a momentous sexual experience, I think don't feel beholden to all the real details. Like it can have happened the way you write it, but the character it happened to might not be you.
All right, Bleeders, that was just a little preview. The whole interview is so good, and it's over on YouTube. So again, you go to youtube.com/@bleederspodcast. That is youtube.com/@bleederspodcast for the full conversation. You're going to love it. Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Bleeders. Oh, writing is so much better with friends. I'm your host, Courtney Kosak, and hey, let's connect on social media. I am at Courtney Kosak, that is Kosak on Twitter and Instagram, and I made brand new accounts for the show, so you can follow the show at Bleeders Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, and make sure you're signed up for the Bleeders Companion Substack. There is a link in the episode description for that. And after enjoying this content, if you could do me a huge favor, I have a goal to get to 50 ratings on both Apple Podcasts and Spotify by the end of the summer. Right now I am at 7 and 20 respectively. And these ratings and reviews, they really help with guest booking and elevating that. So if you could just leave a 5-star rating and a review, if it's possible, that would make my day. And that would also improve your listening experience. So join me again next week for another all-new episode. In the meantime, happy bleeding! P.S. I am teaching a workshop through Writer Die Magazine and Chill Subs. It's called How to Build a Platform for Writers Who Shudder at the Thought, which is my former self, and I have since been complimented on my platform. So I want to tell you how to do it. It's on July 22nd. It's just $50, and I'm going to tell you how to leverage podcasts, newsletters, social media, and maybe some stuff you haven't even thought about yet to build your writer platform. And no, you don't need to start your own podcast. So again, it is on July 22nd, and it will be recorded. I hope you'll join me. There's a link in the episode description for more info.